What's up guys, this is Nick at Stridewise.com. Today I'm taking a look at the very famous and very greasy Doc Marten 1460s. So here's an interesting fact you might not have known. This boot was designed by a guy called Dr. Klaus Märtens, who was a doctor in the German army in 1945. As in the Nazi army. He injured his ankle while he was skiing, and he found the Nazi standard issue army boots were uncomfortable on his injured foot. So he designed his own boot with air padded soles made from tires. And after the war ended, he went into business making them on his own. For a while, he made these soles out of discarded rubber from Luftwaffe airfields. That's the Nazi Air Force. And then over time, he made these boots. They got very popular. And what's interesting is that when they started out, they were not that cool at all. Their biggest customer base was people with injured feet, people with like age-related foot pain. And for the first decade, 80% of the sales were made to housewives over the age of 40. Somehow their target market went from being that uncool to being incredibly cool. And as the 20th century progressed, these boots became sort of the default shoe for people like rockers and punks and grunge rockers and skinheads and all these cool rock musicians in between. For a while, the production was based in England until the company almost declared bankruptcy in 2003, and then they moved a bunch of their production overseas, mostly to China and Thailand. And today, just 1% of all their boots are made in England, according to Business Insider. But this still remains a symbol of cool Britannia. So let's take a closer look at it. So this leather is a famously greasy and very corrected leather. It's super smooth going around there. The design is relatively minimalist. There's not a ton to talk about here. It's triple stitched along the side. Otherwise it's single stitched up here and around the counter. So it's not screaming durability like a Wolverine 1000 mile or a Thorogood mock toe or something like that. But you know, it is what it is. It's very tall, this boot. Most boots are like 6 inches tall. This is over 7 inches. So when I've been walking around in these, which I have been doing for quite a while, you do need to have a relatively long socks. Otherwise it just gets super uncomfortable. Another thing that I want to point out, the most characteristic thing of the Doc Martens brand, of course, is this like yellow stitching around the welt, which I was surprised to learn is a Goodyear welt. I assumed it was going to be like a cemented sole or something like that with the welting here just for show, but this is indeed a Goodyear welt, but it's a kind of unusual type of Goodyear welt that I'm going to get into a little bit later on. The shape of the shoe, kind of blobby. It's pretty shapeless. The leather is pretty thin, kind of a snubby sort of shape to the toe and everything like that. Some people really like that, some people don't. That is worth pointing out though, it doesn't really hold its shape particularly well. Pretty thin leather. And besides the yellow stitching around the welt, the sole is this very nice soft rubber, which doesn't look remotely formal or anything like that. But the shoe is not meant to look formal, it's meant to look cool, and that's kind of hard to deny. This has a lot of cultural associations with it. It's an enormously popular shoe, and it's relatively cool looking, at least if that's what you're going for. All right, so what's up with this leather? This leather comes from either South America or Asia, which is a pretty broad net to cast. That's all they could tell me when I spoke with Doc Martens. And it's super corrected, like really smooth, to the point that I think it almost looks plasticky. There's no real surprise there. Everyone already knows what Doc Martens look like before they buy them. But in my opinion, this leather looks about as cheap as it is. And it is pretty cheap, so that shouldn't be too disappointing. But that's maybe being a bit too harsh. I should probably say that instead it has a very particular aesthetic that some people really like and others feel like it's just a bit too smooth. Doc Martens labeling describes this as durable and famously stiff to start with. It molds to your feet and gets more comfortable with wear. Smooth leather can be polished to a dapper shine or artfully scuffed up depending on your preference. So this is the very classic 1460 leather, which they describe as having a smooth, semi-bright appearance. Personally, I would probably use greasy as the first word to describe them, but they actually have another version of this boot called black greasy that is less shiny than this one. And a good thing about this enormous company is that they have a ton of other leathers to choose from. So I got the most popular one because I wanted my review to be as useful as possible for as many people as possible. But you can also get them in more matte and less shiny leathers. It's very popular to get oxblood Doc Martens. I actually had a pair myself when I was 17. And there are varieties in white and green and flowery patterns. And there's actually even one in Chrome XL if you want to fork out the extra money. So Doc Martens are known for their Wonder Balsam product for taking care of this leather. It's a mixture of lanolin and beeswax and coconut oil, and that's meant to soften and polish the leather, and you're not really meant to use it more than once a month or so. Even that seems pretty frequent, but that's what they advised when I spoke to them. Now you can probably just use other products if you want. I know a lot of people just use coconut oil on these boots, But if you're interested in weather resistance and water resistance, that beeswax is actually pretty important. But if you're really interested in weather resistance, they also sell a product called Dubbin Polish, which is a mixture of natural waxes. And that's gonna be a better idea if you are really intending to put these shoes through a lot of damage, because it adds a thicker layer of wax all around the shoe. So that's the two options you wanna think about. So this sole Doc Martens is very famous for. They told me it's an inorganic rubber. It's oil and fat resistant, and it really is super soft. As I mentioned, it was originally used for people with orthotic concerns and foot pain and things like that. And I mean, look, it's not even a little bit dressy. This is an ultra casual boot, but yeah, the shock absorption is great. And it's pretty comfortable in that regard. It's a little bit noisy when you're on indoor surfaces. It squeaks like a little bit sometimes. And anyway, after this rubber, there's what the guy on the phone called a cork material, and then the insole is a vegan material that he then clarified is a polyurethane foam, which is not super uncommon, and it also kind of contributes to that shock absorption. If you're not a fan of the yellow stitching here, which I'll be honest, doesn't come off as particularly refined or mature in my opinion, but I think that's kind of the point, to be fair. Anyway, if you don't like the yellow stitching here, you can always get their monochromatic boots, which are monochromatic. And a few downsides to this sole though, there's no shank, which means it's not as stable as some other boots. And also this boot is a lot harder to resole. Like, I had a hard time believing these are Goodyear welted, but according to the guys I spoke with, and a GQ article and a bunch of other places, these boots are Goodyear welted in that the upper and the sole are heat sewn together. That said, they are famously hard to resole. Like, a good cobbler might be able to cut it all off and attach a new one, but generally speaking, you probably shouldn't expect to be able to resole these. But then again, the sole is super long lasting and the upper isn't crazy long lasting, so it might never be an issue. So for men, the sizes run from 6 to 14, and they only have one width available, and they don't have any half sizes available, which is always a bit surprising when a shoe company does that. You are advised to size down half a size or like a full size if you do normally wear half sizes. I'm an 11.5 in a branding device, or a little bit over that, and a lot of my boots are a size 11 anyway. I got these in an 11, and it worked out fine. Like, it was okay, but the fact there are no half sizes, and the fact that there's no wide or narrow sizes available, that's gonna, make the boot inaccessible for, like, I don't know, half the population or something, if a really well-fitting boot is really important to you. So that's definitely worth emphasizing. Walking around in these, there are a few things I really want to emphasize. Number one, the sole really is very, very soft, very, very squishy. In that respect, this is a pair of boots that is pretty close to a sneaker, like closer than most of my other boots in that respect. Also, number two, you can tell there's no shank in this. Like, it's not really all that stable, which is again another way that is a bit like a sneaker, but I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. A lot of people prefer a shank. A lot of people say it's the most important part of a boot, so did want to emphasize that. Number three, it doesn't really fit the foot as well as I expected. Like, I think this is my correct size, but nonetheless, as I mentioned, it's pretty shapeless. It's kind of blobby. Again, there's no shank, so it's not super stable. My heel slips quite a bit in these as well. And I did wear them for a long time. I did break them in, but generally speaking, for something that started out as like an orthotic device, like for people recovering from injuries, I was expecting it to cradle the foot a bit better. I didn't really find it did. It's almost a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, obviously they have several sizes, but it's a very generic kind of fit is what I'm trying to say. Number four, the last thing I wanted to say, it didn't actually have that much of a break-in period. A lot of people out there talk about how tough these shoes are to break in, and a lot of people like boots that are really hard to break in. It's like a rite of passage for them or something. But I didn't actually have that experience. I didn't really have much difficulty breaking these in. I got a bit of abrasion on my pinky toe. Besides that, it wasn't a big deal. I think that might be because it's one of the newer models. I bought it this year, and that means that it's made in Asia. It's in China or Thailand, not 100% sure which one, but there is a reputation out there that the models made in China or Thailand, they are a lot easier to break in. A lot of people see that as like the harbinger of the death of the brand, that, these new boots made in Asia, they're not as difficult to break in, therefore they must be poor quality, therefore Doc Martens are going down the tube. I'm not really able to comment on any of that. All I can say is that one consequence of them being made in Asia, at least from what I can tell, break-in wasn't that bad, for me anyway. Now, these are famously inexpensive boots. It's one of the biggest pros of the brand. And on Amazon.com, these boots are running for about $140. And on Doc Martens' official website, they're $140. I think on Amazon, they're $141 actually, last time I checked. But yeah, that's about the price you can expect to pay for boots. That's pretty inexpensive. If you want to get the ones that are made in Britain, you can. Those are going to be $200. A lot of people say that the made in Britain ones are better quality. There's a good chance they're just kind of wistful for a less globalized world. There are a lot of blogs out there that I read comparing the two different versions, the cheaper one and the made in Britain one. Some say the leather is thicker in the British one, some people say it's thinner, so I can't really say for sure either way, but in any case, these are the Asian ducks, and 140 bucks, it's a pretty good deal. All right, so why should you get a pair of 1460s? They're very cheap. Like, it's not a big sacrifice to get these. They're just 140 bucks. Even if you just wear them a few times, 140 bucks, it's an inexpensive shoe. And they're also sold in so many places that it's not hard to find them on sale as well, especially if you're a bit patient, so that's an upside. Relatively water resistant as far as the welting goes, so that's gonna be good news for some folks. It's also, in my opinion, honestly, the best thing about this boot is the sole. It really is very soft, it's very squishy, it's very nice to walk around in. There are some cons that I'm going to mention about the fit, but generally a big upside for this is definitely how like nice and soft the sole is. Shock absorption is really good. You can kind of run around in this and it's not too punishing on the joints. So that's a nice thing about it. It's also, I mean, look, it's a cultural icon, you know. This is a shoe that has an enormous amount of history as far as boot culture goes and culture at large. There are very few shoes that have a place in culture as much as this. Like I'm thinking about like the Chuck Taylors from Converse, some other boots as well. But as far as boots go, yeah, they're enormously popular. They're pretty cool in certain spaces. They're inimitable. Like these are kind of boots that they have a spot in music culture. That's really important to a lot of folks. And they're also boots that you can wear with a t-shirt, which is not that common. So there are certain things about this boot that you just can't get with any other brand. Now, I did have some issues with these boots. First of all, the shaft is very high, so I can't wear these with half of my socks, which is like a surprise with these. The laces come undone very easily, even if I double knot them, which is a bit annoying. The sole, as nice as it is, as soft as it is, it's kind of loud when you walk around inside. It like squeaks a little bit. It's also very hard to resole. There is no shank in this. The fit is very kind of generic and blobby and shapeless, and I get a bit of heel slippage in these as well, which is like a little bit frustrating. The leather is very thin, and honestly, these boots, I don't think they're all that versatile. Like, I feel very weird wearing these with anything other than black jeans or maybe faded jeans, maybe some dark nice jeans, but even if the jeans are nice, I can't really wear them. They definitely don't go with slacks. They don't go with khakis or chinos, in my opinion. And these boots, honestly, like the thing with Doc Martens is the brand is so popular and these boots are so popular that everyone already has associations with these boots before they see you wearing them. And these boots, they're associated with teenagers. Like teenagers wear these boots. People in their 20s wear these boots as well. That's fine. They're very cool when you're a teenager. In your 20s, they can be okay. Honestly, when I see a guy wearing these in his 30s or 40s or 50s, I feel like he just didn't get the memo that you are allowed to wear nicer boots. Like no one told him that these are boots for teenagers. You know what I mean? I'm gonna make some enemies saying that, but like another thing with these boots is that they're unisex, right? So they're worn by men and women. When women wear them, I don't think people would really argue with this too much. When women wear them, it's to give their outfit a slightly tougher, more masculine edge. When a man wears them, honestly, I think it feminizes the outfit a little bit. That has a lot to do with these like bright yellow stitches. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. I'm not saying that no man can wear these in any context, but when I see these boots worn by a man, especially when he's an older guy, I feel like they make the outfit a little bit less manly and a little bit less mature as well. So long story short, I think these boots come with some baggage. All right, those are just my thoughts on the Doc Marten 1460s. They are very much a cultural icon of youth culture and rock and roll culture. If you do not fall into either of those categories, I don't really know why you'd wear them, but that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think of these boots, and make sure you subscribe because I got a ton more boot reviews coming up.